the quiet before the storm. Isla strolled down the cobblestone street of Alderwick, the sea's salty tang wrapping her in a welcome embrace. The town was a haven of familiarity, a place where every face, every creaking shutter of the local shops felt like home. Today, as the late afternoon sun painted the quaint facades in warm hues, she made her way to the library, her mind at ease with the promise of quiet and literature. Inside, the library was a sanctuary of whispered legends and timeless tales. Isla's gentle smile broadened as she spotted a young girl, eyes aglow with wonder, searching the shelves. "Looking for a fairy tale?" Isla asked, her tone playful yet tender. The little girl's response came with wide-eyed sincerity. "I want to read about brave wolves and magical witches." Isla's heart skipped a beat at the mention. A secret passion stirred inside her. "Every story holds a spark of truth," she replied, her voice warm and reassuring. While organizing an old shelf, her fingers grazed the spine of a weathered volume. The cover boasted an intricately embossed wolf emblem, a design so masterful it seemed almost alive. In that instant, a brief headache tugged at her temples, an odd reminder of something she couldn't yet name. Shaking off the discomfort, she felt an inexplicable awareness, as if unseen eyes were following her every move, silently acknowledging a destiny long whispered in the winds. That night, as the moon ruled over her small seaside apartment, Isla's sleep carried her away into a vivid dream. She found herself sprinting through a forest of towering pines and ancient oaks, the pounding of her heart echoing like a drumbeat of fate. The forest was alive, its towering silhouettes standing as silent witnesses to her desperate run. Out of the murk, a pair of mesmerizing amber eyes locked onto her, filled with a curious intensity that both alarmed and enticed her. A rich, resonant voice spoke her name, a voice that seemed to cradle her soul and ignite a long-forgotten longing. The sound was commanding yet intimate, stirring emotions she had never allowed herself to explore. When Isla awoke, her breath caught in her chest as she sat upright in bed. The remnants of the dream clung to her like a delicate promise. She brushed it aside as mere stress, a trick of an overworked mind. Yet the echo of that powerful call lingered, hinting at mysteries waiting just beyond the veil of the ordinary. Isla closed the library door with a soft click, the cool evening air wrapping around her as she stepped into the quiet streets of Alderwick. The seaside town was hushed, its familiar charm lending comfort even as shadows stretched along the narrow alleyways. As she walked, the gentle sound of her footsteps mingled with the distant whisper of the tide. Her thoughts wandered back to the stories from earlier, a little girl's excitement over brave wolves and magical witches. A smile tugged at her lips, though an inexplicable tension tugged at the edges of her awareness. She sensed a presence following her, a subtle weight at the back of her mind that urged caution. "Probably just my imagination," Isla told herself, quickening her stride along the dim alley. The glow from the street lamps cast long shapes across the path, each one dancing with mystery and unspoken secrets. Then, out of the deep shadows, a towering figure emerged. The silhouette was imposing, muscles rippling under a dark coat that absorbed the scant light. When the figure stepped forward, the night seemed to hold its breath. In the low light, a pair of amber eyes lit up, intense and unwavering, locking onto hers with a magnetic pull. Isla's heart skipped a beat. "Who's there?" she called, her voice firm despite the rapid thud of her pulse. The figure did not speak, only studied her with an intensity that set her skin aflame. The eyes held a promise, a mixture of danger and something achingly familiar. For a moment, time slowed. The world around Isla faded into a soft blur as the figure advanced, the air charged with unspoken destiny. In that charged silence, a spark of something profound ignited between them, a faded connection waiting to be unraveled. Isla felt the ground shift beneath her feet as the stranger took another step forward. Every instinct in her screamed at her to run, to flee from the pull of those amber eyes. But before she could react, powerful arms seized her from behind, her breath caught as she struggled, her heels scraping against the concrete in a desperate attempt to break free. "Let me go," she snapped, twisting in his grip, scratching at the strong forearm locked around her waist. But the man's hold didn't waver. His muscles flexed with ease as he restrained her, a sense of predatory calm radiating off him. She kicked again, harder this time, aiming for the knee she hoped was vulnerable. His body didn't flinch. Instead, a low and familiar voice, deep and velvety, whispered in her ear, "This is for your own good." Her heart pounded madly against her ribcage, pulse climbing higher as desperation surged through her veins. Panic threatened to cloud her thoughts, but she fought to stay focused, fighting back with each twist, every effort to break free. But the fury inside her wasn't enough against his pure, overwhelming strength. In a swift motion, he pinned her arms to her sides, his lips barely brushing her ear as he inhaled, his chest expanding against her back, tasting the air like it was something more, something elusive. Without warning, a sharp pain pierced the tender skin at her neck, a prick of cold metal. Her entire body stiffened, every muscle locking up in protest as the sting bloomed into a numbing ache. What's... She struggled to find her voice, but the words never fully formed. Her vision started to blur, the edges of the world dissolving and spinning out of focus. She fought against the pull of unconsciousness, but it was no use. The feeling of the needles pushing deeper, of the darkness creeping in, was overpowering, suffocating. "Sleep?" The man's voice came again, close to her ear, soft yet chilling in its finality. Isla's body finally surrendered, her limbs going limp, her breath faltering as everything turned into a heavy, unyielding darkness. The last thing she felt was the softness of his coat against her cheek, a brief sensation before everything went cold and silent, and then nothing. For 11 seconds, before Isla could process the sudden shift in her evening, powerful arms encircled her, yanking her into a tight grip. Instinct flared. She spun and lashed out with a defiant cry. "Let me go," she snapped, her nails raking against skin that refused to release her. Her heart thundered as she twisted and kicked, every fiber of her being determined to break free. The man's hold remained unyielding, his gaze intense and unblinking. "This is for your own good," he stated, his voice low and resolute, a tone that seemed to carry both command and a hint of a hidden tenderness that left her even more bewildered. Anger and fear warred within Isla as she struggled, her protests met by his steadfast strength. In one fluid motion, he produced a small syringe from the folds of his jacket. Before her mind could catch up, the cool metal met her skin at her neck, and a sharp prick sent a jolt through her. Her vision narrowed, the world around her dissolving into a haze of conflicting sensations. Pain mingled with an unexpected, magnetic pull that whispered of a connection far deeper than mere chance. "I'm not yours," she managed to choke out, defiance burning even as the edges of her consciousness dimmed. A final, resolute declaration slipped from him. "You belong to me." And in that charged, breathtaking moment, as darkness claimed her, a spark of destiny ignited, a promise of a fated bond that would soon reshape both their lives. Warmth tugged Isla from the depths of unconsciousness, but it wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. Her eyelids fluttered open, her head pounding with a deep, throbbing ache. The air was thick with the faint scent of pine and something sharper, musk and leather. She blinked, her vision sharpening. Where? Stone walls surrounded her, cold, imposing, ancient. Heavy, floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of a forest shrouded in morning mist. The trees like silent sentinels guarding some forgotten secret. Luxurious furnishings stood at odds with the prison she'd been forced into, plush armchairs, a thick Persian rug, a roaring fireplace. The room might have been beautiful if not for the truth pressing down on her. Her wrists burned with soreness. Lifting her arm, she saw faint red marks, a reminder of being dragged here against her will. Fantastic. Heart hammering, Isla swung her legs over the edge of the bed, her bare feet meeting the cool wooden floor. She darted to the door, twisting the knob. Locked, of course. Panic clawed up her throat, tightening her chest. "Think," she whispered to herself. She scanned the room for anything that could be used as a weapon. Vase, lamp, hell, even the decorative poker by the fireplace. But her reflection caught her attention. A gilded mirror hung on the wall. Isla stepped toward it, breath catching. Her temple bore a small bruise, purple and angry against her olive skin. Her hair was tousled, strands tumbling over her shoulders in a chaotic mess. The image staring back at her wasn't the composed librarian. No, this was someone thrown into a twisted fairy tale. A dark one where the princess didn't get a choice. "Why me?" she whispered to the reflection, swallowing hard against the knot of fear. The door creaked open, breaking the tense silence. Isla spun, eyes narrowing. A man stepped in, and the room seemed to shrink under the weight of his presence. Tall, broad, his dark hair was tousled like he'd run his fingers through it 1,000 times, and those amber eyes? God, those were his eyes, the ones from her dream. They glowed with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. He closed the door behind him, gaze sweeping over her, assessing, measuring, like she was both puzzle and prey. "You're awake," he said, voice deep enough to rattle her bones. "Good. We don't have much time." Isla's stomach twisted. "Excuse me?" Her voice cracked, but she masked it with a defiant glare. "You kidnapped me, and now you think we're on some kind of schedule? Release me right now, or what?" His lips curved into something between a smirk and a challenge. "You'll glare me to death?" Her jaw tightened. "Look, I don't know what you think this is, but you're my mate." The words hung in the air, thick and undeniable. Isla blinked. And then, laughter. It burst out of her before she could stop it. "Wow," she said between gasps. That's rich. Is this some weird cult thing? Because newsflash, buddy, I'm not drinking any Kool-Aid." His expression didn't waver. "You can laugh all you want, but it's the truth. Our bond's already there, you feel it. Don't bother denying it." Her heart beat, traitorous, steady, and strong in her chest. There was a pull, yes, but that was adrenaline, right? Panic, not whatever he was insinuating. "I feel nothing," she lied, taking a step back. "And even if I did, that doesn't excuse abducting me." Raiden's gaze darkened, but there was no heat of anger, just frustration. "If there was another way, I'd have taken it. But we're out of options. My pack is cursed, Isla. Without you, they'll die." Isla, the way he said her name, it was like a caress. Unwanted warmth curled in her belly, and she hated herself for noticing. "I don't know anything about curses," she snapped, arms crossing defensively. "I'm just a librarian." "No," he said, voice quieter now, but it was a different kind of dangerous. "You're a lot more than that, and you're going to figure it out whether you like it or not." Her throat tightened. "I want to go home." "That's not an option." His gaze softened, just a fraction. "Not until this is over." And as Isla stood there, glaring at the man claiming she was some fated mate, she had the sinking feeling that her ordinary life had just been shattered beyond repair. Isla's jaw clenched as she planted her feet firmly on the hardwood floor, standing between Raiden and the door like a storm barely contained. "Let me be very clear," she said, voice tight with fury. "You've kidnapped me, you're spouting some delusional soulmate nonsense, and now you expect me to what? Fall at your feet? I don't know what you're on, but I'm not buying it." Raiden sighed, rubbing the back of his neck like she was the one being unreasonable. "I'm not asking you to fall at my feet." "Oh, really? Because it sure feels like you think I should just accept all this." Her hand gestured to the lavish prison surrounding her. "Fated mate, curses. I'm a librarian, not some mystical key to your werewolf soap opera." His gaze darkened. "It's not a soap opera," he said, voice low with warning. "It's my pack's survival." "Oh, boo-hoo," she shot back. "That's not my problem." His patience snapped. In a swift movement, he closed the distance between them, his large hand wrapping around her upper arm, not harsh enough to hurt, but firm enough to halt her retreat. Heat flared where his skin met hers, sending a pulse of something electric through her body. Her breath hitched. "You feel that?" His amber eyes bore into hers, intense and unwavering. "That pull between us? That's fate. You can deny it all you want, but it's there." Isla's heart betrayed her, skipping in her chest. No. This wasn't happening. She glared up at him, wrenching her arm free. I don't believe in fate, she spat, and I sure as hell don't believe in you. Something shifted in his expression, equal parts intrigue and frustration, as if her defiance was both an obstacle and a challenge he couldn't help but admire. His gaze swept over her face, lingering on her flushed cheeks and the fire burning in her eyes. You can fight it all you want, princess, he said, voice edged with rough amusement, but it's not going away. Stop calling me that, he grinned. Smug bastard. Spinning on her heel, Isla paced to the window, ignoring the confusing warmth still buzzing under her skin. She heard him move toward the door. You need time? Fine. His voice softened, but the steel remained. Think about it. But don't take too long. You'll realize I'm right. And with that, the door clicked shut, locking her in with her fury and her traitorous heartbeat. God, Isla muttered, dragging her hands through her hair. What the hell is happening? Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the edge of the bed. Her pulse was still racing, not just from anger. No, something deeper hummed beneath the surface, warm and insistent, like a song she'd forgotten the words to, but still knew the melody. Why does his presence do that to me? It was infuriating. He was arrogant, overbearing, and had, let's not forget, abducted her. Yet her body hadn't exactly recoiled when he'd touched her. No, it had lit up like a damn Christmas tree. Fate, she scoffed under her breath. What a load of crap. Desperate for distraction, she stood and scanned the room. Her gaze landed on a bookshelf nestled between the windows. Rows of ancient leather-bound tomes beckoned. Better than sitting here stewing. Pulling one free, she flipped it open, only to be greeted by symbols she didn't recognize. And yet, she did. A chill rolled down her spine. Her fingers traced the strange runes, and suddenly, images flashed through her mind. Fleeting, but vivid. Moonlight, wolves, howling. Her voice chanting something foreign, yet achingly familiar. Her knees buckled. What the hell? Shaking, she snapped the book shut, pressing it to her chest. Get a grip, Isla. But the unease coiled tighter. Those symbols. They weren't just random scribbles. Her subconscious knew them. And that scared her more than Raiden ever could. She paced the room, the fire crackling in the hearth casting golden hues on the walls. Her mind whirled with questions she didn't want to ask and answers she feared to hear. Was there truth to his words? To that pull? The door stayed closed, her heart stayed conflicted, and somewhere deep inside, a part of her whispered that her life, her ordinary, safe life, had just been burned to ashes. The night had settled in with an eerie stillness, the kind that made every creak of the old wood underfoot sound far too loud, every gust of wind feel like a whispered secret. Isla paced the room, her thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and lingering questions. She hadn't seen Raiden since the argument, since he'd left her alone with nothing but her racing heart and a head full of doubt. The moonlight streamed through the tall windows, bathing the room in soft silver. Isla had been trying to make sense of the strange dreams, the pull she couldn't ignore. Every moment felt like a fractured piece of a puzzle, but what was the picture supposed to be? Was he really her mate? And if so, why did it feel like the universe had dropped her into a nightmare instead of a love story? A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts, drawing her back to the present. Isla froze, her heart jumping into her throat. She hadn't expected anyone, and the sound was far too gentle to be Raiden's usual approach. She moved slowly, cautiously toward the door, her breath caught in her chest. When she opened it, there was no one there, just the cool night air sweeping in. But as she stepped forward to close the door, a figure stepped out from the shadows. A woman, tall and graceful, with silver hair cascading in waves down her back, catching the moonlight like threads of starlight. She moved with a fluidity that made her appear almost ethereal. Isla took a step back, her instinct screaming at her to be wary. "Who are you?" The woman's eyes, dark and piercing, met hers with an intensity that made her shiver. "I'm not your enemy," she whispered, her voice smooth and calm, yet carrying an authority that demanded attention. Isla's heart beat faster. Why was this woman here? What did she want? I'm Selene, the woman continued, her gaze unwavering, and I have come to give you a warning. A warning, Isla echoed, her brow furrowing. About what? Everything you think you know is a lie, Selene said, her voice low and steady. The path you're on, the choices you're about to make, they will lead you somewhere you cannot undo. Trust your instincts, Isla. Don't let anyone sway you from them. Isla felt her breath catch. A lie? What does she mean? She opened her mouth to ask more questions, to demand the answers she so desperately needed, but before she could speak, Celine had already taken a step back, her figure blending with the shadows. I'll be watching, Celine added softly, just before vanishing into the darkness. Isla stood frozen, the air thick with the weight of her words. What the hell was that about? She couldn't deny the unsettling feeling that crept up her spine, but the urge to follow the woman, to demand more answers, was impossible to ignore. Instead, she was left with nothing but more unanswered questions and the feeling that she was now standing on the edge of something far deeper and far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The next morning, Isla couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped, not just in the room, but in a life that felt like it was spiraling out of her control. She had to get out, to escape before this nightmare swallowed her whole. There had to be a way out. It wasn't as if she hadn't been trying to find a way to escape already. She'd been eyeing the window for hours. The stone walls outside were steep, but she'd read enough adventure novels to know that a determined person could make a plan work with a bit of ingenuity. She gathered the bedsheets, tying them together with quick, practiced knots, and tossed them over the edge of the window. Her pulse raced as she made sure the rope was secure enough to hold her weight. This is it. I can do this. Her hands were trembling, but she didn't give herself time to second guess. She hoisted herself over the edge, gripping the sheets as her feet hit the cool stone. The ground was still a long way down, but the adrenaline was already making her forget her fears. Every inch she descended made her heart race faster, the distant sound of birds and wind filling her ears. Isla's heart skipped. No, no, no. She looked down. Raiden stood at the bottom of the building, arms crossed, his intense gaze fixed directly on her. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered, voice like dark velvet. Isla's stomach sank. What do you want? She shot back, trying to mask the fear creeping up her throat. I'm not your prisoner. Really? He raised an eyebrow, his voice tinged with amusement. You're climbing down the side of a building in a sheet. You're not exactly winning any freedom points here. Her hands tightened around the rope. You can't keep me here. Raiden's lips twitched, like he was trying not to smile. You'll get yourself killed doing this. Without another word, he reached up and grabbed the rope, yanking her back toward him with terrifying ease. Let go, Isla snapped, but the moment she was within reach, he caught her around the waist, lifting her effortlessly off the side of the building. Feisty, he murmured, carrying her back inside as though she weighed nothing. I hate you, Isla muttered through gritted teeth, heart hammering in her chest, her mind screaming at her to find another way. Raiden's gaze softened, though the corner of his mouth still quirked upward. You can hate me all you want. Doesn't change the fact that I'm keeping you safe. I don't need you to keep me safe, she shot back. His grip tightened slightly around her, a silent promise that said, You're not getting away that easily. You will eventually. Isla's heart slammed against her ribs, betraying her as it raced in a way that was definitely not out of anger. Raiden's gaze was unyielding as he led Isla through the heavy, ornate doors of the fortress, his grip on her hand firm but not constricting. The cool evening air was a sharp contrast to the warmth of his touch, and Isla's heart raced, not just from the chill. As they stepped outside, the scenery unfolded in front of her like a scene from the mystical books she adored. A sprawling, ancient forest stretched as far as the eye could see, its trees towering and majestic, bathed in the ethereal glow of the setting sun. The air was alive, buzzing with an energy that Isla could feel tingling on her skin, whispering secrets in a language her heart understood before her mind could catch up. This is my world, Raiden's voice broke through her awe, pulling her attention back to him. He gestured expansively, his face solemn, eyes intensely fixed on her. And whether you like it or not, it's yours too. Isla's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words sank in. This was no ordinary forest. Something about it felt different, something wild, something supernatural. Just then, a rustling from the nearby bushes caught her attention, and before she could react, what she assumed was a massive wolf emerged. Her first instinct was to retreat, but as she stepped back, the creature changed. It wasn't a mere shift, it was a fluid transformation where the wolf seemed to melt, reshaping and reforming into a human form. Isla's eyes widened in disbelief as more figures appeared, each shifting from beast to human with an eerie grace. "This isn't possible," she whispered, her voice a mixture of fear and fascination. Raiden watched her closely, a mix of apprehension and hope playing across his features. "Everything you've thought impossible is very real, Isla. This is our nature, our curse and our gift." Isla turned to him, her mind racing, questions burning on her tongue. But no words came. Instead, she stood frozen, watching the wolves turn men and women, their eyes reflecting the dying light of the day. How could her life have taken such an unbelievable turn? Back in the safety of her room, Isla stood by the window, her hands pressed against the cold glass, staring at the moon as it rose high in the sky, casting a silver sheen over the forest she'd just witnessed alive with magic. Her reflection in the glass seemed a ghost of herself, her eyes haunted by the truths she'd seen. As the night deepened, images began to flicker in her mind's eye, unbidden, unwelcome. She saw herself as a child, running through a forest not unlike the one outside her window, laughing as wolves raced beside her. Their eyes weren't threatening but protective, and her younger self was unafraid, filled with joy. She shook her head fiercely, trying to dispel the visions. This isn't real. It can't be. But the denial felt hollow, forced. Deep down, something stirred, a memory or a feeling, ancient and powerful, like the call of the wild that refused to be silenced. Isla wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the chill of the night seeping through the glass. Why does this feel like a homecoming, she wondered, a tear tracing a cold path down her cheek. Her gaze returned to the moon, to the wild, vast forest bathed in its glow. And somewhere, deep in her soul, a wolf howled. A call that resonated with her heart. A reminder that this world, incredible and terrifying, was part of her now. I don't understand any of this, she thought, a sense of loneliness enveloping her. Yet, the howl echoed again, this time like a lullaby, pulling at her with a sorrowful yet soothing note. As much as she wanted to deny it, to run back to her old life, she knew deep down that her path had changed forever. As she turned from the window, her reflection seemed to blur, a woman caught between worlds. Raiden's words echoed in her mind, a solemn reminder, it's yours too. Isla let out a shaky breath, her decision clear. Tomorrow she would confront this new reality, but tonight she allowed herself to mourn the ordinary life she'd lost, even as the extraordinary beckoned with fierce, wild whispers. The atmosphere was charged as Raiden led Isla through the dense underbrush to a clearing that served as the heart of the pack's territory. The setting sun cast long shadows over the ground, and the air was thick with anticipation. Or was it tension? Isla couldn't tell, but the weight of the pack's gaze as they entered was almost palpable. Pack members of all ages and sizes gathered around, their eyes fixed on Isla. Some looked at her with what could only be described as reverence, awed by the presence of the woman who might save them from their curse. Others, however, did not mask their hostility so well. Their stares were sharp, skeptical, even angry. Raiden, ever the stoic leader, showed no signs of discomfort. His grip on Isla's hand was reassuring, but it did little to calm her racing heart. He addressed the pack with authority, announcing her arrival without revealing the full truth of her role yet. Dax, a man with piercing blue eyes and a demeanor as serious as his position, approached Isla. He was Raiden's beta, the second in command, and his loyalty to Raiden was renowned within the pack. He leaned in close, his voice low and fraught with warning. Not everyone here wants you alive." The words sent a chill down Isla's spine, and her unease deepened. She nodded slightly, unsure of how to respond. Stax didn't wait for her reply. His message was a warning, not a conversation. As the meeting dispersed, Isla felt isolated despite the crowd. That was until a voice broke through her apprehension. "You handled that like a champ." Isla turned to see a young woman with a rebellious gleam in her eyes. This was Lyra, known for her fiery spirit and little regard for pack politics. Her smile was infectious, her attitude a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the clearing moments ago. "Thanks," Isla managed a small smile. "I'm Isla. I know who you are," Lyra winked. "And if you ever plan to run again, let me know. I might just join you." The offer was half joking, but Isla appreciated the gesture. It was nice to know she might have an ally in this strange new world. Their conversation was cut short by a new presence, a man stepping forward with an air of quiet confidence that immediately drew the attention of everyone still lingering in the clearing. He was tall, his dark hair tousled as if he'd just run his hands through it, and his smile was lazy, but it never quite reached his eyes, which were a cool, calculating grit. "She doesn't belong to you, Raiden," the man said, his voice calm but carrying across the clearing. His gaze shifted to Isla, and something in his look, a dark, knowing twinkle, made her stomach flip. "This is Kieran," Lyra murmured, her tone tinged with a mix of respect and caution. "He doesn't play well with others." Raiden's jaw tightened, and Isla could feel the tension between the two men. It was like an electric current charging the air with an impending storm. Kieran's eyes stayed on Isla, and she felt that strange pull again, different from what she felt with Raiden. It was less a command and more a curious invitation, one that whispered secrets and stories of moonlit nights and shadowed forests. As Kieran walked away, his parting look promised that this wasn't the last she'd see of him. Isla's heart raced for reasons she couldn't pinpoint. Was it fear, excitement, or perhaps something entirely more dangerous? Like the thrill of an unknown path unfolding before her. The moon hung high, casting a silvery glow over the pack grounds as Isla wandered back toward the fortress. Her conversation with Kieran replayed in her head, his lazy smile and intense gaze lingering far longer than she cared to admit. There was something about him. Dangerous, yes, but oddly magnetic. Too magnetic. She barely made it a few steps before a hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Startled, she spun around, only to be met by the familiar and infuriating face of Raiden. His amber eyes burned into hers, tension rolling off him in waves. "Stay away from him," he said, voice rough with something that sounded far too much like jealousy for her liking. Isla yanked her arm free, glaring at him. "Excuse me? Did you seriously just pull me aside to play the possessive card? Newsflash, I'm not your property." "He's dangerous," Raiden growled. "You don't know what he's capable of." "Oh, and you're what, Prince Charming?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "Because from where I'm standing, you've got the whole brooding abductor thing down pat." His jaw tightened, but instead of backing off, he stepped closer, closing the space between them. Isla's pulse quickened, annoyingly, not just from anger. His scent, something woodsy with a hint of leather, wrapped around her, warm and intoxicating. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said, voice softer now but no less intense. "Enlighten me," she shot back. "Oh wait, you won't. You just expect me to trust you because fate says so." Raiden's gaze dropped to her lips, and before she could process what was happening, he closed the remaining gap. His mouth brushed hers, hot, demanding, sending a jolt through her that set her entire body alight. Her mind screamed to shove him away, but her traitorous body responded. His hand cupped her jaw, deepening the kiss, claiming her in a way that spoke to something primal and ancient. Sparks erupted where they touched, that invisible tether between them pulling tight. And then, reality check. Isla's palms pressed against his chest, and with a firm push, she broke the kiss, stumbling back. Her lips tingled, breath coming fast and uneven. "What the hell was that?" she snapped, anger flaring to mask the confusion, and the part of her that liked it. Raiden's eyes darkened. "Don't pretend you didn't feel it." "Oh, I felt something all right." "Regret," she lied, wiping at her lips. "Next time you pull that crap, I'll break your nose." He smirked, infuriatingly unbothered. "You keep telling yourself that, princess." Her heart raced, betraying her calm facade. Why does he affect me like this? Furious with him and herself. Isla spun on her heel, storming off before he could see just how shaken she truly was. Later that night, Isla found herself sneaking through the darkened halls of the fortress, guided only by the faint glow of emergency lamps and the sound of her own heartbeat. Lyra had been surprisingly eager to help, handing her a stolen key with a mischievous grin. "The archives are down in the East Wing. Be quick. If you get caught, you didn't get this from me." Now, as she crept into the cavernous room, shelves stacked with ancient tomes and brittle scrolls surrounded her. The air smelled of old parchment and secrets better left buried. Her fingers skimmed the spines, searching for, what exactly, answers. Anything to explain the madness her life had become. Something drew her to a weathered book tucked in the corner, its leather cover cracked, a faint symbol etched into it that made her chest tighten. Opening it, she scanned the pages. Symbols she didn't recognize should have meant nothing. Except they did. Her eyes caught a passage mentioning a wolf witch, a rare being capable of breaking ancient curses. The word sent a chill racing down her spine. Wolf witch. Could that be what Raiden meant? She flipped to the next page, and that's when she saw it. Her name. Isla. Written in bold black ink, right there on the yellowed page. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled as she traced the letters, her mind spinning. What does this mean? How did they know my name? Memories flickered. Brief flashes of moonlit forests, a woman's voice chanting, wolves circling protectively around her. She shook her head, fighting the images. No, this can't be real, and yet it was. Her gaze darted to the door. Lyra had said they didn't have much time. Closing the book, Isla hugged it to her chest. Answers were here, dangerous ones, but she wasn't leaving without them. This is my life now, she realized, heart pounding. Secrets, curses, and a whole lot of trouble. And she was in the middle of it all. Isla wandered deeper into the ancient forest, the ground beneath her feet carpeted with fallen leaves and moss. The canopy overhead was a dense weave of green, casting shadows that danced in the gentle breeze. She was searching, though for what, she wasn't quite sure. Answers, perhaps. Or maybe just a moment to breathe without the weight of her newfound destiny pressing down on her. As she rounded a bend in the path, Celine appeared as if summoned from the very mist, her silver hair shimmering with an almost ethereal quality. Isla stopped dead in her tracks, her heart thudding painfully against her ribs. Celine's expression was grave as she approached. "Isla, there's much you do not know, much that has been hidden from you." Isla's voice was barely above a whisper. "Why? Why me?" Celine's gaze was sympathetic yet firm. "Your memories were taken to protect you. You are the Wolf Witch, Isla, a powerful being who can tip the balance between survival and destruction." "No, I'm human," Isla protested, stepping back, her denial rooted in a deep-seated fear of the unknown. With a gentle, almost maternal motion, Celine reached out and placed her hand on Isla's forehead. The contact was like a key turning in a lock, and suddenly Isla's mind was flooded with images. Wolves chanting around her, her own voice chanting spells under the moonlight. Rituals that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Isla staggered back, overwhelmed by the onslaught of memories. "This can't be!" Her voice was a mix of wonder and terror. "It is," Celine said softly. "And it is only the beginning, child. You have a power within you that can save or doom us all." Later, as dusk began to paint the sky with shades of orange and purple, Isla confronted Raiden by the edge of the lake, the water mirroring the turmoil inside her. The revelations from Selene had left her reeling, but there was still one piece of the puzzle missing. Raiden's demeanor was solemn, his usual confidence replaced by a visible tension. "I know what I am now. Isla said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling within her. "But why am I really here, Raiden? What haven't you told me?" Raiden's gaze shifted away, unable to meet her eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with a burden she could only begin to understand. "You're not here to save the pack. You're here to die for it." The words hit Isla like a physical blow, her knees weakening. "You lied to me," she whispered, betrayal slicing through her heart like a knife. "I did," Raiden admitted, his eyes tormented as they met hers again. "But not to deceive you cruelly. Our curse. It's ancient, unbreakable, without a sacrifice, and the wolf witch—" His voice broke off, choked with emotion. Isla's anger flared, hot and blinding. "So, I'm just a pawn in your tragic game? A means to an end?" Raiden stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know I'd—" He faltered, struggling with the confession. "I didn't know I'd care about you." "Care?" Isla echoed, bitter laughter escaping her lips. "You have a funny way of showing it." "Isla, please," Raiden's voice cracked with desperation. "Without you, we're doomed. I wish there were another way." The raw honesty in his voice made her pause, the fury simmering down to a painful ache. Was it possible to forgive such a betrayal? Could she live knowing her life was destined to end for the sake of another? The questions swirled in her mind, none of them with clear answers. As the night settled in, the stars above, indifferent to her turmoil, Ela looked at Raiden, really looked at him. He was a man caught between his duty and his desires, and she, a woman who held the power to destroy or heal. "Raiden," she started, her voice firmer now, "I need time. I need to understand all of this, not just for your pack, but for me." Raiden nodded, the agony in his eyes a mirror of her own. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, Isla. Whatever you decide." As he walked away, leaving her alone by the lake, Isla knew one thing for certain. Her journey was far from over, and the path ahead was fraught with shadows and doubts. But for the first time, she felt a spark of something fierce and resolute burning within her, the will to choose her own fate. Isla's heart was a wild drum in her chest as she fled from the revelations that had turned her world upside down. The forest was a blur of shadow and silver moonlight, her feet barely touching the leaf-strewn path as she ran. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to move, to feel the rush of air in her lungs, anything to drown out the roar of her thoughts. That's when she collided with a solid, immovable force. Stumbling back, she looked up into Kieran's dark, intense eyes, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Running from your problems, Isla?" he asked, his voice low and somehow enticing. "Not now, Kieran," she breathed out, frustration threading through her tone. Kieran stepped closer, his presence enveloping her in a warmth that was as comforting as it was dangerous. "I can save you from this," he said, his voice a velvet promise that sent shivers down her spine. "But it means burning their world to ash." Isla's pulse quickened. He was dangerous, no doubt about it, but there was a sincerity in his gaze that she couldn't ignore. "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion and an underlying curiosity that she couldn't quite quell. Kieran's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile that hinted at secrets she was yet to uncover. "Let's just say I have my reasons, ones that involve you more than you might realize." Her instincts screamed that there was much more to Kieran than the brooding outsider persona he projected. "And what do you get out of this?" Isla pressed, needing to understand his angle. "A chance to right some wrongs," Kieran replied, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. "And maybe to start something new with someone who has the power to change everything." The air between them was charged with a palpable tension as Kieran stepped closer, his hand reaching up to gently cup her face. His touch was surprisingly tender, sending a cascade of warmth through her veins. "They say Raiden's your fated mate," he whispered, his breath a caress against her skin. "They're wrong." Isla's breath hitched, her heart caught in her throat. The moonlight danced in his eyes, turning them into pools of molten heat that seemed to see right through her. "It's me!" Shock rippled through her, followed by a surge of denial. This couldn't be happening, not now, not with everything else in turmoil. But even as she fought it, a deep, undeniable desire unfurled within her, echoing his words with a truth her heart recognized, but her mind rebelled against. "This can't be," she murmured, her voice a mix of wonder and confusion. Her entire world, everything she had believed, was being challenged in the span of a heartbeat. Kieran's thumb stroked her cheek, a touch that felt like it could ignite her very soul. "Choose, Isla," he murmured, his voice soft yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "Them or me?" Her eyes met his, and in them she saw a myriad of emotions: hope, fear, defiance. The choice loomed before her, daunting yet crystal clear. Kieran offered a path filled with risks and unknowns, but also honesty and a connection that tugged at her very core. As the night whispered around them, Isla knew her decision would alter the course of her destiny. With each heartbeat, she felt herself drawn more to Kieran, to the promise of a future that was as wild and untamed as the magic coursing through her veins. "Kieran," she started, her decision made, her voice a whisper of acceptance that sealed their fates together. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her to take the leap into the unknown. And she did. The night was thick around them, the only light emanating from the fire that crackled and popped in Kieran's hidden lair. Isla sat huddled on a rough blanket, her eyes fixed on the flames that danced and swayed. Each flicker seemed to cast a new shadow, mirroring the turmoil inside her. Kieran sat across from her, his face half hidden by darkness, his eyes glowing with a somber intensity. "I'm not asking you to trust me blindly," he said, his voice low and earnest. "But help me bring down Raiden's pack, and I promise, I'll protect you." Isla's hands tightened around her knees. She didn't trust either man completely, but sitting here now, Kieran's presence felt more honest, more raw than Raiden's ever did. "And after? What happens when the pack is gone?" she asked, needing to understand the full scope of his plan. Kieran's gaze didn't waver. "Then we rebuild," he said simply. "A fresh start, one where you're free to lead a life not shadowed by curses or sacrifices." The idea was both terrifying and tempting. To cut away the old ties, to start anew, it was what part of her craved, but at what cost? "I need to think," she murmured, turning her gaze back to the fire. Kieran nodded, respecting her need for space. "Take all the time you need," he said, his voice a comforting rumble in the quiet of the night. Later, as Isla lay curled under a blanket, sleep found her easily, pulling her down into its depths. She dreamt of a time less complicated, a childhood memory of running through moonlit woods, the air filled with the sound of her laughter and the earthy scent of pine needles underfoot. Her mother was there, too, a vibrant figure with powerful aura, her voice echoing through the trees. "Betrayal from within will be your greatest test," her mother had said, a note of urgency in her tone. The dream shifted, and Isla saw herself older, stronger, surrounded by wolves whose eyes glinted with loyalty and something darker: secrets. She woke suddenly, her breath catching in her throat, her body coated in a thin sheen of sweat despite the chill in the air. Kieran was there, sitting by the dying fire, his eyes reflecting its embers. "You remember, don't you?" he whispered, not needing to raise his voice. It was more a statement than a question. Isla sat up, the remnants of her dream clinging to her like cobwebs. "Yes," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The memories were there, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known she was part of. Kieran moved closer, his presence reassuring. "What your mother said about betrayal. It's part of why you're here now." Isla met his gaze, finding an unexpected solace in his eyes. "I think I've always known, somewhere deep down," she confessed, the words tasting of truth and pain. Kieran reached out, his hand brushing a lock of hair from her face in a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. "We'll face whatever comes together," he promised, and in that moment Isla believed him. The fire had dwindled to glowing coals, casting just enough light to see the determination in Kieran's eyes. Together they sat in the quiet, watching the night deepen around them, their shared resolve forging a new bond in the shadows of what was and what could be. In the dim light of early dawn, Isla and Kieran huddled over a rough map of the Pack's estate spread out on a makeshift table in his lair. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, and the stakes of their plan weighed heavily in the silence between them. Kieran pointed to a section of the map with a confident jab. The dagger is kept here, in the ritual chamber. It's heavily guarded during the day, but less so during the gatherings when most are distracted. Isla chewed on her lower lip, her gaze tracing the pathways they'd have to navigate. Raiden won't see it coming, Kieran said with a sly grin, trying to lighten the mood. But Isla's stomach was a knot of nerves. Doubts nagged at her, the fear of trading one cage for another. What if I'm just jumping from one manipulator to another, she thought. Aloud, she said, "Are we sure about this? It's not just Raiden we're deceiving, it's everyone." Kieran's expression sobered, and he reached across the table to squeeze her hand gently. "I know this is hard, but trust me, we're doing the right thing. This dagger, this ritual, it's not the answer, not with the cost it comes with." His sincerity was clear, and it helped steady her resolve. Isla nodded, taking a deep breath. "Okay, let's do this, for everyone's sake." The night of the heist, the Pack's estate was alive with activity, the air buzzing with the energy of the gathered Pack members. Isla's heart pounded in her chest as she slipped through the shadows, her body cloaked from head to toe, blending into the night. Every step she took was calculated, every breath measured. As she neared the ritual chamber, the familiar scent of earth and incense grew stronger, the murmurs of the ongoing gathering a dull roar in her ears. The chamber was just ahead, the door slightly ajar. Isla slipped inside, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room. There, on a stone pedestal, lay the ceremonial dagger. Its blade gleamed ominously, a pulsing glow emanating from the runes etched into its surface. With a trembling hand, she reached out and grasped the hilt. The cold touch of the metal seemed to sear her skin, a surge of dark energy coursing through her. She stifled a gasp, clutching the dagger tightly. Just then, a familiar voice cut through the thick silence. "What are you doing, Isla?" Isla froze, her heart skipping a beat. Slowly, she turned to face Raiden, who stood in the doorway, his expression a mask of shock and betrayal. His eyes, usually so full of warmth when they gazed at her, now bore into her with a cold intensity. "Isla, why?" His voice was a mix of pain and disbelief. Panic and resolve warred within her. She held the dagger out slightly, her stance defensive yet uncertain. "I can't let you do this, Raiden. Not the ritual. It's wrong and you know it." Raiden stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace, or perhaps surrender. "Isla, put the dagger down. We can talk about this. There's no need for it to go any further." Her grip on the dagger tightened, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The weight of her decision lay heavy on her shoulders. The path she chose next could change everything. Would she stand her ground, or would her resolve crumble under the weight of Raiden's plea? The answer lay shimmering in the air, as fragile and significant as the silence that enveloped them. Isla's breath came in shallow, rapid bursts as she backed away from the pedestal, the ceremonial dagger clutched tightly in her hand. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but Raiden's voice cut through the haze like a blade. "You're making a mistake," he said, stepping into the chamber, blocking the only exit. His amber eyes locked onto hers, molten with anger, betrayal, and something far more complicated, hurt. That was what nearly undid her. Not the fury. Not the authority he wielded so effortlessly. It was the raw wound in his gaze that sliced deeper than any dagger could. Isla's grip tightened on the weapon. Her body remembered him. The warmth of his touch, the pull between them that had once been undeniable. But her mind, sharp and bruised, screamed of his deception. He lied. He used me. She wouldn't forget that, not now. "I'm doing what I have to," she shot back, forcing steel into her voice. "You can't sacrifice me for your pack. I won't let you." Raiden's jaw clenched, muscles rippling with tension. It's not that simple. He took a step forward. Isla instinctively retreated, the cool stone wall pressing against her back. This isn't about just you. It's about all of us. Without that dagger, we have nothing. No, she snapped, her heart warring with itself. You had choices, Raiden. You chose to lie, to manipulate me into... Her voice caught, thick with anger and something dangerously close to heartbreak, into believing there was something real between us. There is, he growled, closing the gap between them with a speed that sent her heart skittering. His scent, earth, pines, and something uniquely him, wrapped around her, tugging at every part of her that wasn't furious. His hand braced against the wall beside her, caging her in without touching. You feel it, Isla. Don't lie to yourself. Her chest heaved, damn him, because yes, she felt it. The magnetic pull, the spark that had ignited the moment their eyes first met. Her body remembered. Her soul remembered. But betrayal had a way of dulling even the brightest connection. I can't. Her voice wavered. I won't be your sacrifice. Raiden's expression twisted with conflicting emotions, frustration, desperation, something like regret. I never wanted it to be like this, he said roughly. But you're part of this, whether you like it or not. Then I'll decide my role in it, she snapped back. He reached for her, not in anger, but in some twisted form of comfort, or maybe desperation. That was her cue. Isla ducked under his arm, her body moving on instinct. Her boots pounded against the stone floor as she bolted from the chamber. Isla! Raiden's voice echoed after her, followed by the guttural growl that sent goosebumps racing down her arms. It was the sound of a man. No, a wolf, torn between claiming and losing. Her legs burned as she sprinted through the winding corridors, the dagger's weight both comforting and terrifying in her hand. Keep going. Don't look back. But her heart, traitorous as ever, thumped with every memory of Raiden. His touch, his kiss, the way his gaze had softened just for her. Behind her, his growl rumbled again, angry, raw, echoing like a storm that promised this was far from over. And Isla? She wasn't sure if she was running from him or from herself. The trek back to Kieran's hideout was a blur of adrenaline and pounding heartbeats. Isla's lungs burned from exertion, and her mind was a whirlwind of clashing emotions. Fear, relief, and an undercurrent of something more dangerous. Desire. Confusion. Longing for a truth that seemed just out of reach. Kieran waited just inside the entrance, arms crossed, his gaze sharp as she entered. The cave's warm glow contrasted with the cool night air, wrapping around them like a cocoon. Isla's palm ached from gripping the ceremonial dagger, its dark energy pulsing against her skin. Without a word, she shoved it into his hands. This doesn't mean I trust you, she said, voice sharp enough to cut. Kieran's lips curved into that infuriatingly smug grin, the one that always seemed to get under her skin. No. He tucked the dagger away and stepped closer, heat radiating from his body. His fingers reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. Your body says otherwise. Her breath hitched at the contact, the gentleness of it contrasting with the tension between them. God help her, the bond between them stirred again, a magnetic pull that tugged at something deep inside. His gaze dropped to her lips, and for a moment, the air between them thickened with temptation and a shared awareness. I'm not, she started, but Kieran's thumb grazed her jaw, sending shivers skittering down her spine. Dangerous, a voice in her head warned. Yet her body, her traitorous body, leaned into him. Kieran's voice dropped to a husky whisper. Tell me you don't feel it. Lie to me, Isla. Her pulse raced. Damn him. The intensity in his gaze, the warmth of his hand. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing you shouldn't jump but being drawn to the fall. Her lips parted, words failing her. And that terrified her more than anything else. With a burst of willpower, Isla stepped back, breaking the connection. I can't. This isn't... She shook her head, needing distance, needing air. We have bigger problems. Sure. Kieran drawled, though the heat in his gaze didn't cool. But don't think this conversation is over. Isla scowled at him, heart pounding. No, it's definitely not over. And that scared her almost as much as everything else. The reprieve was short-lived. Kieran's phone buzzed on the makeshift table, and as he answered, Isla noticed the tension that immediately bled into his posture. His easygoing demeanor shifted, replaced with something sharper, colder. "What is it?" she asked as he ended the call. "Raiden's pack," Kieran said grimly. "They're declaring war." Her stomach twisted. "War over me? They think I've corrupted you," Kieran added with a humorless chuckle. "Claim you've been turned against them." Isla's hands clenched into fists. Of course they do. No matter what she did, someone would see her as the villain. Raiden's betrayal was still raw, but hearing that the pack, those she'd tried to understand, wanted her blood was something else entirely. "So, that's it?" she said, voice tight. "They'd rather kill me than face the truth?" Kieran's jaw tightened. Pack loyalty runs deep. Raiden's got their trust no matter how twisted his choices. A heavy silence stretched between them, the weight of the situation settling like a stone in her chest. "They'll never see me as anything but a threat now." Kieran stepped closer, his gaze fierce. "You didn't ask for this, Isla. None of this is your fault." "No?" Her voice cracked. "Because it sure as hell feels like I'm the reason everyone's ready to tear each other apart." "You're not." His tone brooked no argument. Raiden made his choices. So did the pack. Their blind loyalty isn't on you. Isla swallowed hard, her mind racing. War over her. The girl who, a week ago, was shelving books and sipping tea in peace. How did it come to this? Kieran reached out again, his hand hovering before resting lightly on her shoulder. "I promised to protect you," he said, softer now. "And I meant it." For the first time that night, Isla let herself lean into the warmth of his touch, drawing strength from it. Her world was unraveling, but maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face it alone. Kieran paced the confines of his lair, tension radiating off him in waves. Isla sat at the edge of a makeshift table, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the worn floorboards. The air between them was thick with tension, heavy with words unsaid. "We hit them first," Kieran said, his tone leaving no room for debate. "Strike hard, fast, before they have the chance to regroup." Isla's brows shot up. "You're talking about attacking the entire pack?" Her voice rose with disbelief. "That's... Kieran, people will get hurt. There has to be another way." Kieran stopped pacing, whirling to face her. His eyes burned with a fierce light. "They're planning to kill you, Isla. Sacrifice you, and you're worried about their well-being?" She opened her mouth to argue, but faltered. Her mind flashed with memories of the pack members, faces she'd come to know, names that carried stories. Not all of them want this, she wanted to say. But her silence stretched on, betraying her conflicted heart. "They'd sacrifice you without blinking," Kieran continued, his voice rough. "Why are you still protecting them?" Her throat tightened. The truth was, she didn't know. Maybe it was the part of her that still remembered Raiden's softer moments, the warmth in his gaze before betrayal twisted everything. Or maybe it was because, deep down, she didn't want more blood on her hands. Kieran's jaw clenched as he took a step closer, his frustration palpable. "This isn't the time to be noble, Isla. This is about survival. Your survival." Isla's gaze dropped to the floor, the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. Her loyalty to Raiden and the pack was tangled in lies and half-truths, but Kieran's protectiveness, however ruthless, was honest, brutally so, and that scared her just as much as it comforted her. The fire's glow cast long shadows on the walls when Celine appeared, her arrival as silent as the wind. Isla jumped, heart skipping. Kieran, less surprised, simply raised an eyebrow. "Convenient timing," Kieran drawled. Celine's gaze slid to him before settling on Isla with a gravity that instantly erased any lingering tension. "There's more you need to know," she said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of revelation. Isla's stomach twisted. More? She echoed, dread pooling in her chest. What else could there possibly be? Selin didn't soften the blow. Raiden knew from the start you were never his fated mate. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Isla's world tilted, her breath catching painfully in her throat. What? She whispered, voice raw. He used the fated mate lie to manipulate you, Celine continued, unflinching. He needed you compliant, obedient. He believed convincing you of a bond was the fastest way to achieve that. Kieran swore under his breath, but Isla barely heard him. Her pulse roared in her ears, fragments of memories crashing into her. Raiden's tender glances, the magnetic pull she'd thought was fate. Lies, all lies. Her chest ached, betrayal a jagged wound tearing through her. I believed him, she breathed, shame and anger swirling. God, I was so stupid. No, Kieran cut in, voice gentler now. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's on him, not you. Isla's hands clenched into fists. Heartbreak morphed into something sharper, cleaner. Resolve. The haze of confusion cleared, replaced by a cold, burning clarity. No more hesitation, no more doubt. She lifted her chin, eyes flashing with newfound determination. No more lies, she said, her voice steel. He played me. That ends now. Celine nodded approvingly. Good. You'll need that fire for what comes next. Kieran offered a crooked smile, dangerous and proud. Now that's the Isla I like to see. Isla shot him a look. Careful. I'm still deciding if I like you. His grin widened. You do, and damn it, she kind of did. But right now, revenge burned hotter than any bond ever could. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows on the walls of Kieran's lair. The warmth did little to soothe Isla's racing heart or calm the storm swirling in her chest. She stood with her arms crossed, her gaze pinned to Kieran, who leaned casually against the rough stone wall, exuding that maddening mix of confidence and recklessness. You're doing this for revenge, she accused, voice sharp but laced with frustration. I want freedom, you want blood? Kieran's lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Is that what you think? Isn't it true? Isla shot back, taking a step closer. You're so set on burning Raiden's world down, you can't see anything else. His gaze darkened, the air between them thick with tension. And you're so busy running from what you feel, you can't see what's right in front of you. Her breath caught, nerves and anger tangling into something far more dangerous. Desire. She hated how easily he got under her skin, how his words, his presence, made everything inside her tilt off balance. Kieran pushed off the wall, closing the distance between them with slow, deliberate steps. His hand reached out, fingers brushing against her jaw, warm and calloused. Isla should have stepped back. She didn't. I don't care about Raiden right now, he said, voice rough with honesty. This isn't about him or his damn pack or any of that. His gaze locked onto hers, fierce and unwavering. I want you. The world can burn, Isla, but I'll keep you safe. Her heart stuttered, her resolve wavered. It was the tenderness in his touch that undid her, the raw honesty in his words that slipped past every wall she'd tried to keep standing. And when he leaned in, when his lips captured hers, it was like striking a match in a room soaked in gasoline. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was fire, hungry, consuming, desperate. His hands cupped her face, tilting her just right as his mouth claimed hers like he'd been waiting forever. And God, she kissed him back. Every pent-up emotion, fear, anger, longing, poured out in that connection. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more. His body pressed against hers, solid and warm, his lips coaxing hers open, deepening the kiss until her head spun. The world beyond them dissolved. No betrayals, no curses, no impending war, just the heat, the urgency, the them of it all. When they finally broke apart, breaths mingling, Isla's head was a mess of swirling thoughts and a pounding heart that refused to settle. That, she started, voice breathless, was a mistake. Kieran smirked, not the least bit repentant. Didn't feel like one. She glared at him, cheeks flushed. You're insufferable. Yeah, he agreed, thumb brushing her lower lip, but you can't resist me. And maybe, just maybe he was right. But she wasn't about to admit that out loud. Not yet. The dagger lay between them on the table, its blade gleaming ominously in the soft glow of lantern light. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a key. A symbol of everything Isla needed to stop. And yet, staring at it sent a shiver down her spine. Power radiated from it, dark and ancient, calling to something deep inside her she wasn't sure she wanted to acknowledge. "Timing is everything," Kieran said, his voice steady as he mapped out their route. His finger traced a path through the estate's outer grounds, past the patrol zones and through the concealed entrance to the ritual chamber. "We'll slip in during the pre-ritual preparations. They'll be too focused to notice us if we're quick." Isla nodded, but barely processed the words. Her thoughts twisted in a storm of conflicting emotions. Her bond with Kieran was undeniable, sparks that ignited every time he looked at her like she was more than just a pawn in a cosmic game. And yet, Raiden's betrayal still burned. That connection, that lie, still clawed at her chest, making it hard to breathe. And then there was the magic. The powers that had awakened like a wildfire she was only beginning to control. They hummed under her skin, potent and unpredictable, waiting for her command. It was thrilling, terrifying, liberating. "You with me, princess?" Kieran's teasing tone tugged her back. His eyes, however, were serious. Isla forced a breath. "Yeah, just thinking." "Dangerous habit," he smirked, but his hand found hers on the table, warm and grounding. "We do this together, Isla. No heroics, no martyrdom." "Got it?" "Got it," she echoed, squeezing his hand before pulling away. Her gaze fell to the dagger again. "This ends tonight." Later, under a sky littered with stars, Isla sat on a boulder overlooking the sprawling forest. The cool night breeze carried the scent of pine and distant rain. She drew in the crisp air, letting it calm her racing thoughts. Kieran settled beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. Neither spoke for a while. Words felt too heavy, too inadequate for what lay ahead. "If we don't make it," she started, he cut her off. "We will." Isla glanced at him. His usual cocky bravado was replaced by something softer, a vulnerability he rarely let show. It was that side of him, the one behind the smirks and snark, that tugged at her heart. "You really believe that?" she asked. "Belief's got nothing to do with it," he replied, gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's us or them, and I'm not letting them win." His jaw tightened before he turned to face her fully. "But if something does go sideways, you fight. You survive. Got me?" Her throat tightened. Damn him, always looking out for her, even when he tried to play the detached rogue. "Same goes for you, Kieran. No hero crap." He grinned, eyes warm. "You care. I knew it." Isla rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at her lips. "You're insufferable." "Yeah," he murmured, brushing a knuckle along her cheek. "But you like me anyway." His touch was tender, sending warmth spiraling through her. They were on the edge of war, and yet, in that moment under the stars, there was peace. A quiet understanding between two people caught in a storm but finding solace in each other. Isla leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. His arms slid around her, pulling her close. For a few precious minutes, they let the world fade away. Tomorrow would be chaos. Tonight was theirs. The estate loomed ahead, its stone walls bathed in the silver glow of the moon. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle of leaves a potential threat. Isla's pulse thrummed in her ears as she adjusted the hood of her cloak, her fingers brushing the dagger strapped securely at her waist. "You ready?" Kieran whispered beside her, his voice a breath against the tense night air. "As I'll ever be," she replied, nerves coiled tight in her stomach. They moved like shadows through the underbrush, every step calculated, every movement precise. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their senses sharp, but Isla's growing magic swirled around them like a protective cloak, muting sounds, bending light. A pair of sentries stood ahead, their eyes scanning the darkness. Isla closed her eyes, focusing on the hume under her skin. Words she hadn't known she remembered slipped from her lips, soft and sure. A faint shimmer surrounded the guards before their gazes glazed over, their posture relaxing as they turned away. "Nice trick," Kieran muttered, impressed. Isla shot him a look. "Don't distract me." They slipped past the sentries and into a narrow corridor that reeked of incense and old stone. Wards buzzed at the edges of her senses, barriers designed to keep intruders out. Isla pressed her palm to one, channeling her magic. The ward pulsed once, then dissolved like smoke in the wind. "I could get used to having you around," Kieran quipped. "Focus," she hissed, though the corner of her mouth twitched. Deeper into the estate they crept, each turn of the corridor tightening the noose of danger. Isla's nerves burned, but so did her resolve. "This is for me, for my freedom." They reached the entrance to the ritual chamber. Heart pounding, Isla exchanged a look with Kieran. His hand squeezed hers briefly, steadying, grounding. "Let's end this," she whispered, and together they slipped inside, ready to face whatever waited beyond the door. The ritual chamber stretched out before them, vast and echoing with ancient energy. Candles flickered in sconces along the stone walls, their flames casting long, wavering shadows across the floor. Runes pulsed faintly beneath their feet, whispering promises, or perhaps warnings. Isla's fingers tightened around the dagger at her side. Her heart pounded, nerves a taut wire stretched to breaking. This is it. No turning back now. At the center of the room stood Raiden. He was waiting, calm, composed. Yet there was a tension in the set of his shoulders, a storm simmering just beneath the surface. His amber eyes locked onto hers as she stepped forward, and something old, something familiar stirred between them. "You came back," he said softly, voice echoing in the vast chamber. "It's not too late." "Too late?" Isla's grip tightened on the dagger, fury and heartache colliding inside her chest. "You lied to me," she snapped. Her voice, though steady, was laced with betrayal. "Everything. You. The bond. It was all a lie." Raiden's gaze softened, regret flickering in his expression. "I did it to save my pack." His words hung in the air, heavy with guilt and justification. "They're my responsibility, Isla. I couldn't risk losing them." "And sacrificing me was your solution?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "You used me, Raiden. You made me believe in something that wasn't real. It was real." His jaw clenched. "Maybe not the way it started, but spare me," Kieran's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. He stepped forward, posture coiled with barely contained rage. His gaze pinned Raiden with searing contempt. "You'd kill her for it. Don't dress it up as noble." Raiden's eyes darkened. "This isn't your fight." "The hell it isn't," Kieran shot back. "You manipulated her, lied, and now you expect, what, gratitude, forgiveness?" Isla stood between them, her chest tight. The air crackled with tension, charged with emotions that twisted and tangled. Betrayal, anger, and that damnable pull toward Raiden that she hated herself for still feeling. But Kieran's presence was a steady force at her back, a reminder of choices and truths she couldn't ignore. This wasn't just about survival, it was about taking back her power. No more lies, the silence shattered like glass. Raiden's form blurred, bones snapping, limbs elongating as he shifted. His wolf was massive, dark fur, eyes burning gold, every inch of him radiating lethal intent. Kieran didn't hesitate. His own shift was swift, brutal, a blur of muscle and midnight fur. His growl rumbled through the chamber, primal and fierce. Then chaos erupted. They clashed with a force that shook the ground, teeth bared, claws slashing. Fur and blood mingled as they rolled, snapping and snarling, years of animosity boiling to the surface in a whirlwind of violence. Isla staggered back, heart pounding as she took in the ferocity of the fight. Magic surged through her veins, wild and electric. Spells hummed on her tongue, old words she barely understood but instinctively knew. A guard lunged from the shadows, fangs bared, claws outstretched. Her palm shot out and energy blasted from her fingertips, sending him sprawling across the chamber. Another wolf charged. She spun, casting a barrier that shimmered with silver light, deflecting the attack. Focus, Isla. Breathe. But her gaze kept darting to the two wolves locked in battle. Raiden lunged, jaws snapping for Kieran's throat. Kieran twisted, raking claws across Raiden's side, blood splattering the stone floor. She was torn. Part of her wanted to end this, to stop Raiden, to wield the dagger and finish it herself. He lied. He deserves it. But another voice whispered, he did it for his pack, for them, and Kieran, God, Kieran, he was fighting for her. No manipulations, no lies, just raw, fierce protection. Make a choice, her heart screamed. Your choice. The dagger burned in her grip. Power surged. Around her the battle raged, but in that moment everything narrowed down to two paths. Kill Raiden or save them all another way. Her decision once made would shape the fate of everyone. Her breath hitched. Her choice was hers to make. And she made it. The world narrowed to chaos. Growls echoed through the ritual chamber, claws scraping against stone as Kieran and Raiden battled in a blur of fur, fangs, and raw fury. Isla stood frozen for a heartbeat, the dagger burning in her grip, every nerve in her body strung tight. Blood smeared the floor, glistening under the flickering candlelight. Her heart pounded against her ribs, breath ragged. This has to stop. Kieran lunged, jaw snapping, but Raiden twisted at the last second, slamming him into the ground. Stone cracked beneath the impact. Kieran snarled, but Raiden was already on top of him, massive paw pressing against his throat, holding him down with brutal strength. Stay out of this, Isla, Raiden growled, voice deep and resonant even in wolf form. His amber gaze flicked to her, burning with intensity. This is between us. Between them? Like she was some trophy they had to fight over? Anger flared, hot and wild. Her magic surged to the surface, no longer content to simmer quietly. It roared, lightning beneath her skin, pulsing through her veins like fire and storm. The chamber responded. The stone walls cracking, runes glowing brighter as the air thickened with power. I am not a prize to be fought over, Isla's voice boomed through the room, echoing with the force of her unleashed power. Her hair whipped around her face as energy crackled in the air, rattling the bones of everyone present. Both wolves froze, their attention snapping to her. Kieran's gaze was heated, proud. Raiden's was torn, guilt and something softer flickering in his eyes. But Isla didn't care, not anymore. This was her choice, her fate, and she was done being pulled between them. Raiden shifted back into human form, chest heaving, blood streaking his skin. Isla, his voice was rough, pained. Think of the pack. Without that dagger, they're doomed. You know what's at stake. Of course she did. The weight of hundreds of lives hung on her next move. The people Raiden fought for, lied for, betrayed for. But then Kieran, bruised and battered, pushed himself to his feet, his gaze locked onto hers, steady despite the blood at his temple. Think of yourself, he said, voice soft but unwavering. Your life, your freedom. They had no right to demand this of you. Her pulse roared in her ears. Think of the pack. Think of yourself. Them or me? No. Her fingers tightened on the dagger. Her magic flared brighter, swelling to an almost unbearable pitch. Her gaze swept between the two men, the two choices laid bare before her, and then she realized the truth. She didn't have to choose between them. She could choose herself. Lifting the dagger, Isla's decision crystallized in a single clear thought. No more being used. No more being controlled. With a cry that was part rage, part liberation, she raised the blade and shattered it against the stone floor. The effect was immediate. Magic exploded outward, a blinding burst of light and energy that rocked the chamber. The backlash sent everyone flying. Raiden thrown against the wall, Kieran knocked to the ground. Isla stumbled but stood her ground as the storm of power swirled around her, washing away the ritual's hold. The air buzzed with electricity. Candles were snuffed out. The runes etched into the stone flared once, then went dark. And with that, the weight pressing down on her chest lifted. It was over. Her chest heaved with exertion, adrenaline still pumping. Her gaze drifted to Raiden, slumped against the wall, eyes closed, chest rising and falling steadily. Relief, guilt, and finality tangled in her chest. Then she turned to Kieran, who was already looking at her with that infuriating, heartwarming smirk, bloodied but alive. "Hell of a choice, princess," he said, voice rough but laced with admiration. "Took you long enough." Isla let out a shaky laugh, tears stinging her eyes. "Shut up." He pushed to his feet, winced, and pulled her into a fierce, grounding hug. "You did good," he murmured against her hair. Her arms wrapped around him, clinging to the warmth, to the solidity of him. Because the battle was over. But the road back, the road ahead, that was hers to walk, on her terms. And this time, she wasn't walking it alone. The chamber pulsed with the aftermath of Isla's choice. Magic, untamed and wild, still crackled in the air like a storm refusing to settle. Runes carved into the stone walls glowed faintly before winking out, leaving behind an eerie calm. The weight that had suffocated the room lifted, and somewhere, somehow, Isla felt the curse unravel, slipping away like smoke through her fingers. And then the burn started. A searing heat ignited in her veins, blooming outward from her chest. Her knees buckled. The room tilted and spun, colors blurring into a kaleidoscope of pain and light. Her heart stuttered, her breath catching in her throat as her body rebelled against the sheer force of the power she'd unleashed. Someone called her name. Kieran? Or maybe just the echo of her own fading thoughts. Her vision darkened at the edges. Worth it, she thought hazily. Her lips curled into a faint smile, even as her body crumpled. Worth it, she gasped, the words barely escaping before the darkness swallowed her whole. No. The word pounded through Kieran's skull like a war drum. He dropped to his knees beside Isla, heart lodged in his throat. Her skin was too pale, her breathing too shallow. Isla, he rasped, shaking her gently. Her head lolled to the side, that defiant spark in her eyes, gone. Panic clawed at him. Not like this, not after everything. Come on, princess, he gritted out, pressing his forehead to hers, ignoring the blood trickling down his temple. You don't get to die on me, not now. He didn't think, didn't hesitate. He reached deep into that well of connection between them, the bond thrumming under his skin, and pushed. Pain flared like a white-hot blade, slicing through him as he poured part of his soul into hers. His energy surged, seeping into her life force, anchoring it, demanding she hold on. His body screamed in protest, muscles locking, vision swimming, but he didn't stop, couldn't. You're mine, he ground out, voice rough and breaking. You fight, you come back to me. His breath hitched, darkness crowding his vision. His last coherent thought was, please, a desperate plea to whatever higher power might be listening, before everything went black. Warmth, softness, breath. His lashes fluttered open, disoriented and aching all over. The ceiling above was unfamiliar stone, shadows stretching lazily across it. Her body felt like she'd been hit by a truck. Twice. But she was alive. Somehow. A groan beside her pulled her attention. Her gaze snapped sideways. Kieran. He lay sprawled beside her, unconscious, face pale and smudged with blood and grime. Panic twisted in her chest. Kieran, she whispered, reaching out to cup his cheek. His skin was warm, but he was breathing ragged, shallow breaths that sent relief washing over her like a tidal wave. Her heart clenched. What did you do, you idiot? Memories crashed back, his voice fierce and unyielding. You don't get to die on me. He'd saved her. At a cost she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Tears pricked her eyes as she pressed her forehead to his. Stupid, stubborn man, she breathed, a shaky laugh breaking through the knot of emotion. She glanced around. The ritual chamber was in ruins. Stones cracked, candles extinguished, the oppressive magic gone. And Raiden? Gone, no trace of him. Just empty space and the lingering echo of choices made. Relief, guilt, heartbreak. They all swirled inside her, tangled and messy. Her fingers tightened around Kieran's. "We did it," she whispered. "But at what cost?" Silence answered her. And yet, despite everything, the weight on her chest felt a little lighter. They'd survived. For now. The cabin was small, nestled at the edge of a clearing, surrounded by towering pines. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting warm patterns on the wooden floor. A fire crackled in the hearth, its gentle warmth cocooning the room in comfort. Isla sat beside the bed, a damp cloth in hand as she gently wiped away the remnants of dried blood from Kieran's temple. His injuries had been worse than she'd initially realized, and watching him lay motionless for days had gnawed at her. There'd been too many close calls, too many moments where she thought she might lose him. Again. "You're lucky I didn't kill you for pulling that soul-sharing stunt," she muttered under her breath, though her fingers were careful as they worked. Idiot. "Talking to yourself, princess?" Her heart skipped. She looked down to find Kieran's eyes, those stormy, mischievous eyes, cracking open. His grin was lopsided, weak but unmistakably him. "Told you I'd survive," he rasped. Relief crashed into her like a tidal wave, and before she could stop herself, she punched his arm, gently but enough to make him wince. "You scared the hell out of me. Didn't mean to," he said, voice rough. "But hey, you're cute when you're worried." She rolled her eyes but couldn't fight the smile tugging at her lips. "You're impossible." "Yeah," he grinned wider, "but I grow on you." Their gazes held, a comfortable silence stretching between them. Complicated didn't even begin to describe what they were. But undeniable? Absolutely. Fate might have set the stage, but they had made the choice to stand together, to fight, to survive. And now they had to figure out what came next. The air outside was fresh, carrying the earthy scent of pine and the promise of spring. Isla stood at the edge of the clearing, arms crossed as she watched a group of wolves, some shifted, others human, approach. Their faces were a mix of uncertainty, hope, and exhaustion. One woman stepped forward, her gaze steady. "You freed us," she said simply. "What now?" The words hung heavy in the air. Isla's heart twisted. What now? She hadn't expected to survive, let alone be looked to for guidance. She wasn't a leader. Hell, she was barely keeping herself together. But looking at them, leaderless, fractured, and searching, she realized she couldn't just walk away. Not when there was a chance to do better, to build something new. "We rebuilt," Isla said finally, voice clear. "Not just a pack, a haven for wolves, witches, anyone who doesn't fit into neat little boxes." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. It wouldn't be easy, healing never was, but maybe, just maybe, they could create something that wasn't built on lies and sacrifices, and that was worth fighting for. Later that evening, the cabin was bathed in soft lamplight. Isla sat on the worn couch, legs tucked beneath her, while Kieran, looking annoyingly smug for someone who'd nearly died, sipped a mug of tea. She glanced at him, biting her lip. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why all of this?" Kieran set the mug down, turning to face her fully. His expression softened, no trace of teasing in sight. "You're chaos," he said, voice rough but honest. "Fire. You challenge me, drive me insane, and you make me feel things I didn't think I could. You're everything I didn't know I needed." Her throat tightened. "Kieran?" He reached out, cupping her cheek. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "Just don't push me away." "I'm not," she whispered. "Not anymore." Their lips met, this time slow, unhurried. No desperation, no urgency. Just warmth, softness. A promise of something real in the ashes of everything they'd survived. When they finally pulled apart, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. "So, this mean you're keeping me around?" She laughed softly. Guess you do grow on me. He grinned. Told you. And for the first time in a long while, Isla felt the stirring of something like peace. Like home. Their future was uncertain, filled with challenges yet to come, but whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together. Fate had brought them together. Choice kept them there. The forest stretched out before Isla, a sea of green bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The trees swayed gently, their leaves whispering secrets to the breeze. It was peaceful, so different from the chaos that had once consumed this place. She stood at the edge of the clearing, arms wrapped around herself, breathing in the fresh air. Where fear had once twisted in her chest, something new took its place. Hope. Behind her she heard laughter, the kind that filled the space where sorrow used to sit. Wolves shifted lazily in the distance, some sparring playfully, others lying beneath the trees, basking in the calm. The pack, leaderless, no longer, was finding its footing, rebuilding from the ruins. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. "You're brooding again," Kieran's voice rumbled as he appeared beside her, his arm draped over her shoulders like it belonged there. Maybe it did. "I don't brood," she shot back, but her lips tugged into a smile. "Sure you don't." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You thinking about running off into the woods or—" "Tempting," she admitted. But no. Her gaze drifted back to the horizon, the sky painted with streaks of pink and orange. "It's just weird, you know? Everything we went through, and now this." "A fresh start," Kieran said. "Messy, complicated. Kinda like you," she elbowed him. "Charming," he grinned. "Always." Silence settled comfortably between them as they watched the sun dip lower, casting the forest in hues of amber and gold. Isla's heart felt full, maybe for the first time in a long while. There were still challenges ahead, scars that wouldn't fade overnight. But she wasn't facing them alone. Not anymore. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, the words tasting like possibility. And it was. Their journey wasn't over, far from it, but standing there with Kieran's warmth anchoring her and the future stretched out like an open road, she was ready. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Hidden in the shadows, a figure stood beneath the canopy, watching the clearing from a distance. Amber eyes burned with intensity, tracking every movement with predatory precision. His jaw tightened as he took in the laughter, the rebuilding, her. Isla. Raiden's gaze lingered on her silhouette, standing so easily beside him. The tension in his shoulders coiled tighter, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. "She thinks this is over," he muttered, voice a low growl swallowed by the wind. It wasn't, not by a long shot. His lips curved into a smile, sharp, dangerous. Plans were already forming. There was more at stake than they knew, more battles to fight, more truths to shatter. Raiden turned, melting back into the trees. The darkness swallowed him whole, but his parting thought lingered in the air like a promise. This isn't over. Not for her, not for any of them. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting warm streaks across the wooden cabin floor. Isla stirred beneath the blanket, stretching as she blinked herself awake. For the first time in what felt like ages, her body didn't ache like she'd been hit by a truck. Her mind, though, that was another story. Turning over, she reached out, her hand meeting cool, empty sheets. Kieran's side of the bed was cold, her stomach twisted. "Kieran?" she called out, voice still rough with sleep. Silence answered. Panic, sharp and immediate, flared. Throwing off the blanket, she swung her legs over the edge of the bed and stood, her heart hammering. "Where the hell?" The front door creaked open. Isla froze as Kieran stepped inside, arms full of supplies, a couple of worn bags slung over his shoulder, a loaf of bread tucked under his arm. Relief hit her first, loosening the tight band around her chest. But then she saw the tension in his posture. His gaze, usually full of warmth and that signature cocky glint, was distant, guarded. "You okay?" she asked, her brow creasing with concern. He shrugged, setting the supplies on the table. "Fine." Except he wasn't. Not even close. He wouldn't look at her, his shoulders tight, jaw clenched. Something was off, and it wasn't just exhaustion. Isla stepped closer, hand brushing his arm. Kieran? I said, I'm fine, he cut in, voice flat. Her heart ached. Liar. But she didn't push, not yet. Something had changed, she just didn't know what. The uneasy quiet stretched through the morning until it shattered with Celine's arrival. The door swung open, wind whipping in as the silver-haired witch stepped inside, face grim. We have a problem. Because of course they did. Isla rubbed a hand down her face. What now? Celine's gaze pinned her. Raiden's alive. Her stomach dropped. What? And worse, Celine continued, he's formed an alliance with rogue wolves. Ones that don't care about casualties. They're planning to reclaim dominance. By force. Isla's pulse roared in her ears. We ended this. They'd shattered the dagger, broken the curse. This was supposed to be over. I thought... Her voice cracked. I thought we ended this. Celine's expression softened, but her words were sharp. Vengeance runs deeper than curses, Isla. Some wounds don't heal. They fester. Her mind spun with images of Raiden, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the promise in his eyes. This isn't over. Apparently, he'd meant it. By afternoon, the cabin was crowded. Lyra sprawled on the floor with a map. Dax leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and a handful of stragglers, wolves who'd stayed loyal, gathered around. Isla stood at the head of the table, feeling everyone's eyes on her. Leadership wasn't something she'd asked for, but here she was. Raiden's making his move, she said. We can't wait for him to strike. Then let's hit them first, Kieran said, his voice hard. His gaze swept the room. We know where they're regrouping. We strike now, while they're still gathering numbers. Isla shook her head. I won't become what he is. This isn't about becoming him, Kieran shot back. It's about surviving. Her jaw clenched. We defend. We protect those who've put their trust in us. I'm not starting another war. Kieran's fists clenched at his sides. Sometimes defense isn't enough, Isla. And sometimes going on the offensive gets people killed. Her voice rose. I'm not sacrificing innocent lives just to be proactive. Their argument crackled with tension. Everyone else wisely stayed silent. Finally, Kieran cursed under his breath and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Isla let out a shaky breath, hands braced on the table. Her resolve didn't feel so solid anymore. Night fell. The fire in the hearth burned low, casting flickering shadows across the room. Isla sat on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, staring into the flames. Exhaustion weighed on her, but worse was the knot of doubt twisting in her gut. Lyra plopped down beside her, stretching out her legs. So, that was fun. Isla let out a humorless laugh. If this is what leadership feels like, I hate it. Yeah, well, you're good at it, Lyra said, nudging her shoulder, even if you're stubborn as hell. Isla sighed, resting her head back against the couch. I don't know what I'm doing. Join the club. Lyra was quiet for a beat before adding, You love him, don't you? Isla blinked, caught off guard. It's complicated, Lyra snorted. Love usually is, war isn't. Her gaze turned serious. You can keep fighting with him, or fight for something with him, your call. Just choose what matters. Choose what matters. Isla's gaze drifted back to the fire. Her heart was a mess of conflicting emotions. Fear, loyalty, anger, love. Yeah, she loved Kieran. God help her, she did. But this wasn't just about them. It was about everyone. And choices had to be made. Long after the fire burned down to embers, Isla sat alone. Raiden's final words echoed in her mind. This isn't over. Neither was the weight of Kieran's loyalty. The way he'd bled for her, fought for her, stood beside her even when she'd pushed him away. No more running, she stood, spine straightening, as resolve hardened in her chest. Her reflection caught in the darkened window, tired, bruised, but fierce. Ready. Morning came with a chill in the air. Isla stepped outside, facing the small group gathered before her. Eyes met hers, hopeful, wary, trusting. "We fight," she said, voice carrying across the clearing. "Not for revenge, not for Raiden's past." Her gaze swept over them, burning with determination. "We fight for our future." And as the wind stirred around them, carrying her words into the trees, Isla knew, whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone, not anymore. The clearing buzzed with activity. Wolves shifted between forms, hauling supplies, reinforcing barricades, and digging trenches. Makeshift weapons, blades, spears, and enchanted arrows were stacked in piles. The air was thick with urgency, every breath charged with tension and anticipation. Isla stood at the center of it all, her palms pressed to the ground. Her breath came slow and steady, her magic humming through her veins as she focused on weaving a protective ward. A faint glow spread beneath her fingertips, carving intricate runes into the soil. Silent promises of protection. A bead of sweat slid down her temple. Focus. She pushed harder, the magic responding, latching onto her will. Around the perimeter, the glow expanded, encasing the encampment in a shimmering barrier. It wasn't foolproof, but it was a hell of a lot better than nothing. "Damn," Lyra muttered, stepping beside her. "Remind me never to piss you off." Isla offered a wry smile. Noted. Patrols ran through their drills, their movements efficient but edged with nerves. No one said it, but they all knew. This was it, the calm before the storm. Her gaze scanned the camp and caught on a familiar figure, Kieran. He stood near the tree line, barking orders to a small group before sending them off. His presence was steady, commanding, but his shoulders were tense, his jaw set tight, their eyes met across the distance. Tension crackled between them, thick with unresolved words and lingering heat from their last fight. But layered beneath was something undeniable. Unity. A shared purpose that didn't need words. He dipped his head in acknowledgement. She nodded back. No apologies, no explanations. Not now. There wasn't time for what-ifs or could-have-beens. There was only now. Night fell with a quiet that felt wrong. Too still, too heavy. The forest beyond the barricades stretched into darkness, secrets hidden in the shadows. Isla found Kieran alone near the weapons stash, seated on a log sharpening a blade with slow, deliberate strokes. The rhythmic scrape of metal against stone echoed in the hush. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his frame spoke volumes. Shoulders coiled tight, gaze distant, jaw clenched like he was holding himself together by a thread. She hesitated, then sat beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. Her gaze drifted to his hands, strong and capable, the scar on his knuckle catching the faint firelight. "If we die tomorrow," she started, voice soft. Kieran paused. The silence stretched until he set the blade aside, turning to face her. His hand reached up, fingers tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His touch was rough, tender, him. "Then let's make tonight count," he murmured, voice a low rumble that sent shivers skittering down her spine. Her breath caught. Then he closed the space between them, his lips capturing hers. The kiss was fire and desperation, softness edged with urgency. His hand cradled her jaw, tilting her head as he deepened the kiss, tasting, claiming. Isla responded in kind, fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer like she couldn't bear an inch of space between them. The world outside, the looming threat, the impending battle, all of it fell away. There was only this, his mouth on hers, his warmth seeping into her skin, the way his thumb traced lazy circles along her waist, grounding her even as he set her alight. "You drive me crazy," she whispered against his lips. He grinned against her mouth. "Good. You do the same." Her laughter dissolved into another kiss. Slower this time. A promise. A tether. Something real. If tomorrow brought war, tonight they had this. And neither of them was letting go. The night air hung heavy with tension, thick with anticipation and the faint scent of pine. The forest, usually alive with rustling leaves and distant howls, was eerily quiet, like it too was holding its breath. Isla stood by the fire, hands clenched into fists at her sides. Her nerves were frayed, every breath tight with anxiety. Around her, warriors, wolves, witches, humans who'd chosen to stay, prepared in grim silence. Weapons gleamed in the firelight, sharpened blades and arrows lined up in neat rows. Then the scout arrived, breathless, face pale. "They're here," he gasped. "Raiden's army, it's at the border." The words hit like a blow to the chest. Isla's stomach twisted, her heart thudding against her ribs. This is it. The scout swallowed hard, gaze darting to her. He sent a message. Silence stretched before the scout finally spoke, voice low. "Surrender, Isla, or we burn everything down." A ripple of shock and anger rolled through the gathered crowd. Isla's pulse roared in her ears. Of course, Raiden wouldn't come quietly. He never had. Her hands trembled, emotions warring inside her, fear, guilt, defiance. She opened her mouth, searching for words, when a familiar warmth pressed against her back. Kieran. His hand settled on her shoulder, strong and grounding. His grip squeezed just enough to steady her, just enough to say, "I've got you." His gaze, when she looked up, was unwavering. "We stand together," he said, voice rough but certain, no hesitation, no second guessing. Her throat tightened, emotion clawing up her chest. Damn him, always knowing exactly what she needed to hear. She nodded, drawing strength from him, from them all. Together. They'd face this together. Dawn broke, slow and blood-red on the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing. The sky stretched in hues of amber and ash, nature's ominous warning painting the morning in fire. Isla stood before the assembled crowd, her people. Lyra to her left, arms crossed but eyes fierce. Dax flanked her right, jaw set in grim determination. Behind them, wolves shifted restlessly, claws scraping dirt, teeth bared. Every face was tense, eyes sharp, breaths measured, all waiting for her. Her heart pounded, not with fear, not anymore, with resolve. "This isn't just about me," she called out, voice carrying across the clearing. "This is about choice, freedom." Her gaze swept over them. So many faces, all looking to her, believing in her. Raiden wants to take that from us, wants to rule through fear, but we... She paused, swallowing hard. "We fight for ourselves, for our future." Murmurs of agreement swelled into growls of support. The weight of their trust settled on her shoulders, heavy, but she bore it willingly. Then the forest trembled. Branches snapped in the distance, leaves shivered, the air thickening with hostile energy. And then they emerged. Wolves, dark and massive, prowled out from between the trees. Rogues in human form strode beside them, weapons drawn, faces twisted with bloodlust. And at the center, Raiden. He stepped forward, tall and commanding, dark hair tousled, amber eyes cold as frost. His gaze locked onto Isla's. No warmth, no hesitation, just icy resolve. "Last chance," his voice rang out. "Surrender, or we end this." Silence stretched, thick with tension. Every eye turned to Isla. Her heart pounded once, twice, steady and sure. She lifted her chin, gaze unwavering. Not today. A beat of stillness, a collective inhale. Then chaos exploded. Chaos erupted in a symphony of snarls, roars, and the clash of steel. The ground shook with the pounding of paws, the air thick with the coppery tang of blood and the sizzle of magic. Wolves shifted mid-charge, fur exploding from skin, bones snapping and reforming as they dove into the fray. Isla stood at the center, her breath quick and sharp. Her palms glowed with energy, arms extended as she threw up shimmering shields to protect her people. A rogue lunged at Lyra. Isla flicked her wrist, sending the attacker sprawling backward with a burst of force. Another wolf, a massive brute with gleaming fangs, charged at Dax, but Isla's magic ensnared its legs, dragging it down. Her focus was razor-sharp, until he appeared. Raiden. He cut through the battlefield like a blade, his presence magnetic, dark, and furious. His gaze locked onto hers, amber eyes burning with betrayal and something darker, Their connection snapped taut. "Isla," he called over the din, voice like a thunderclap. "This ends now." Her heart kicked into high gear. Not like this. He lunged and she barely sidestepped, flinging a shield between them. The force sent her skidding back, boots scraping against churn-up earth. Around them, the battle raged. Wolves tearing into each other, magic lighting up the darkness like fireworks. But in that moment, it was just her and Raiden. Two forces colliding in the middle of carnage, and neither willing to back down. Raiden's fury rolled off him in waves as he advanced. "You could have saved them all, Isla." His voice was raw, edged with desperation. "I trusted you." Her chest tightened, because damn it, a part of her still felt the sting of what they'd once had, but she forced steel into her spine. "Not at the cost of my soul," she shot back. "I won't sacrifice myself for your obsession." His expression twisted. Pain and rage intertwining. "This isn't just about me. It's about survival." Their clash was fierce, physical, magical, brutal. Raiden swung at her. She ducked, retaliating with a blast of energy that sent him sprawling. He recovered fast, too fast, and flung a surge of dark magic her way. Isla raised her arms, absorbing the impact, but the force sent her stumbling. "Focus, Isla. Breathe." Raiden's next attack was worse, his hands weaving an intricate spell, dark tendrils of energy slithering toward her. "You belong to me," he hissed, "and if I can't have you, no one will." Panic flared. Those tendrils reached for her, tightening like a noose, and then a growl ripped through the chaos, deep, guttural. "Kieran!" He tackled Raiden mid-spell, knocking him off balance. Both men crashed to the ground, snarling, fists flying. Kieran's face was bloodied, clothes torn, but his eyes burned with fierce, unrelenting protectiveness. "You'll never touch her again," he snarled, punching Raiden hard enough to send him reeling. Isla's heart twisted. Kieran, always throwing himself in harm's way for her, always standing between her and danger. But Raiden wasn't done. He spat blood, eyes wild, and lunged again, this time toward her. No hesitation, no thinking. Instinct took over. Isla raised her hands, magic surging like a tidal wave through her veins. Roots burst from the earth, twisting, writhing, alive, and snared Raiden midair. He thrashed, snarling, but the roots only tightened, dragging him down. Her energy flared brighter, wild, and hers. Power hummed under her skin, ancient and primal. "This ends now," she said, voice echoing with authority that wasn't just hers, but something older, something fierce. The energy exploded, light engulfing Raiden, rendering him still, his eyes fluttered closed, body going limp in the grasp of the roots. Alive, beaten, defeated. Silence rippled through the battlefield, and then it was over. The din of battle faded into quiet. Survivors staggered to their feet, tending to wounds, helping the fallen. The air hung heavy with exhaustion, the metallic scent of blood lingering. Isla's knees threatened to give out, but then he collapsed beside her. "Kieran!" She dropped down, catching him before he hit the ground fully. His chest heaved with ragged breaths, face pale beneath the grime and blood. Hey, stay with me," she pleaded, fingers threading through his hair. "Mine," he slurred, lying through his teeth, of course. "Liar," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. She cradled him close, pressing her forehead to his. We're okay. His hand found hers, squeezing weakly. "Told you, I wasn't letting you go." A shaky laugh bubbled from her lips. Yeah, hero complex and all. Around them, the world began to stitch itself back together. Wounded tended, fires extinguished, survivors gathered. But for Isla, in that moment, the only thing that mattered was him. And the fact that, against the odds, they'd survived. Days passed, slowly, painstakingly. The village began to breathe again. The battlefield, once scarred and bloodied, was now lined with the buzz of rebuilding. Makeshift tents dotted the clearing, smoke curling from fires where meals were being prepared. Laughter, tentative but real, echoed through the air. Hope threading through the ruins. Isla moved through the crowd, her hands glowing faintly with healing magic as she pressed them to a wounded shoulder. The young wolf winced, but relief softened his features when the pain ebbed. She smiled. "Try not to pick fights with trees next time." He grinned sheepishly. "Can't make any promises." Her magic, once destructive, wild, had found a new purpose. Healing, restoring, saving. Pulling back, she wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, eyes scanning the bustling camp. People worked together, weaving broken walls into something stronger. Her chest swelled with quiet pride. They'd fought. They'd survived. And then, "Kieran Alexander Cole, sit down before I tie you to a chair." Lyra's voice carried across the clearing, followed by the unmistakable growl of the man himself. Isla turned, lips twitching at the sight. Kieran, shirtless, of course, bandages wrapping his chest, hobbling around with a hammer like he wasn't one step away from collapse. "Relax," he grumbled. "I've had worse." "You nearly died, you idiot," Lyra shot back. "I survived," he countered, then spotted Isla watching. His grin was all wolfish charm. "Hey, princess." Isla shook her head, walking over. "Stubborn wolf," she muttered. "What are you even doing? Helping," he said innocently, though the way he winced when he moved said otherwise. Her hand landed on her hip. "You're supposed to be resting." "Resting's boring. Living isn't," she sighed, but the fondness in her tone betrayed her. "Sit, or I'll zap you." His eyes gleamed. "Kinky. Oh my God," Lyra groaned, walking away. "I can't with you two." Kieran smirked, but allowed Isla to guide him to a log. He sat with a wince, dragging her down beside him. His fingers brushed hers. "Seriously? You good?" She nodded, glancing around. "We all are. Or we will be," he squeezed her hand. "Because of you." Her heart twisted. Because of us. Later that afternoon, Celine approached, her expression unreadable. "He's asking for you." Isla didn't need to ask who. Her stomach twisted. Raiden. The makeshift prison was nothing more than reinforced walls and guards standing sentry, but the weight of it pressed heavy on her shoulders as she stepped inside. Raiden sat against the far wall, wrists bound, head bowed. He looked smaller. The fierce alpha, the man who had once commanded armies, now just a man. His gaze lifted as she entered, amber eyes duller, but still familiar. "Isla," she crossed her arms. "You wanted to talk. So talk." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then, "I thought saving the pack meant sacrificing you," he said quietly. "I thought it was the only way." Her throat tightened. "And using me, lying to me." He flinched. "I was wrong." His gaze dropped. "By the time I realized, it was too late." Isla exhaled, emotions twisting inside her, anger, sadness, pity. They'd been so tangled, their lives intertwined with choices that hurt too much to dwell on. "I wanted to hate you," she admitted softly. "And maybe part of me still does, but..." She shook her head. "I'm done carrying that." His lips curved into something like a smile, broken, regretful. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for." "I always was," she said. Turning to leave, she paused at the door. "I hope you find peace, Raiden, but your choices, they are yours to live with." His voice, soft, followed her out. "Take care of yourself, Isla." Outside, the sun bathed the clearing in gold. She stood still for a moment, letting the warmth seep into her skin. Closure wasn't a neat bow. It wasn't forgiveness or forgetting. It was moving forward. And for the first time, she was ready to. The night sky stretched above them, a canvas of stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. A cool breeze rustled the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine and lingering smoke from the campfires that dotted the village. The world felt quieter now. Not whole. There were still scars, but quieter, calmer, healing. Isla sat on the edge of a flat boulder overlooking the clearing, legs drawn up to her chest. Beside her, Kieran leaned back on his elbows, gaze fixed on the stars. His presence, warm and familiar, eased the weight she hadn't realized she was still carrying. They sat in comfortable silence, breath syncing with the gentle rhythm of the night, the kind of peace that settled deep, quiet but profound. "So," Isla finally said, breaking the stillness. "What now?" Kieran glanced at her, lips tugging into a lopsided grin. "We live," her brow arched. "That simple?" "Yeah." He stretched, muscles rippling beneath the bandages that still wrapped his torso. "Maybe find a cabin somewhere far from all this mess. Somewhere quiet. No battles, no rogues trying to kill us, just peace." He shot her a sidelong glance. "And maybe a ridiculous number of books for you. I hear you like those." A laugh bubbled up, soft but real. "You remembered." "Hard to forget when you used to mutter plot twists in your sleep," he teased. "Hey." She elbowed him, but her smile lingered. Turning back to the stars, she sighed. "A cabin, that sounds perfect." He reached over, lacing his fingers through hers. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. Absent, easy, like they'd done it 1,000 times. Maybe, in a way, they had. The future was still a vast unknown, but sitting here under the stars, with Kieran beside her, Isla didn't mind the uncertainty. Not when this felt so right. Of course, peace didn't last long. Footsteps crunched through the underbrush, and both Isla and Kieran turned as Lyra appeared, hands on her hips, expression torn between amusement and exasperation. "You two having a moment?" Lyra asked. "Because I hate to ruin it." "Really?" Kieran sighed dramatically. "Sounds like you're about to ruin it anyway." "Yeah," Lyra shrugged. "A neighboring pack just sent a messenger. They're looking to talk." Isla blinked. "Talk?" "Alliance," Lyra clarified. "Guess kicking Raiden's ass earned you some street cred." Isla groaned, flopping back onto the rock. "No rest for the wicked." Kieran chuckled, tugging her upright. "Hey, you wanted leadership." "I wanted to not die," she shot back. "The rest was a bonus." "Look on the bright side," Kieran said, looping an arm around her shoulders. "You get to play diplomat. Wear fancy clothes. Make speeches." "Kill me now," she muttered, though the warmth blooming in her chest said otherwise. Lyra smirked. "Charming as always." As they turned back toward the village, Kieran pulled Isla closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Whatever comes next," he murmured, "we face it together." She leaned into him, heart steady. Together. And with that, uncertain future and all, they walked on. The clearing was bathed in the soft glow of lanterns strung between trees, their light dancing across faces filled with a bittersweet mix of grief and joy. A massive bonfire crackled at the center, casting warmth against the cool night air. The scent of pine mingled with roasting meat, and laughter occasionally broke through the solemnity. A sound that, days ago, Isla hadn't been sure she'd hear again. Tonight was about remembering and moving forward. The pack gathered around, their gazes turning toward Isla as she stepped forward. Her heart thudded in her chest. Not from nerves, not anymore. This wasn't about fear. It was about them, the survivors, the family they'd become. She cleared her throat, voice carrying across the crowd. "We stand here because we chose to fight, not just for ourselves, but for each other."